Yes, indeed, folks, the sounds of Blue Please here on WoW Radio with myself, Total Biscuit. Welcome to the show. If you just tuned in, you missed most of it, you fools. Another 15 minutes left of the show. Thank you to everyone that's emailed in today. That was an absolute sack full of emails. I'm sorry that I can't read them all out on the air. It's just crazy. It really is, the amount of emails I've got. I'd like to thank everyone for their continued support of WoW Radio, and particularly Blue Please, obviously because, I host it, so I like to thank people for that. It's very cool. And ask if you do have some spare time that you could dig us on dig.com, which would allow us, of course, to get even more popular, and that's a good thing. Check out wcradio.com, tick the shows button at the top of the screen. It will get you to a list of shows, and it will give you dig boxes next to them. Click the dig button. If you don't already have an account, you register with them. It takes about 20 seconds. Really easy to do. And you just click dig on the shows, and yay, we go up in ranking. It's all good. So if everyone who actually was listening to the show right now did that, we would be ahead of every other WoW podcast on there. We're already ahead of all of them bar one. Now, I would like those guys taken down a peg or two, just for the hell of it. So if you feel like it, go to dig.com and dig us, and rate us on iTunes. Reviews are always nice. We like constructive feedback. So if you've got any suggestions, then feel free to rate us on iTunes, or in fact post on our forums at wcradio.com. Please bear in mind that constructive criticism does not involve insulting the show, as people might think. I really don't know where this idea has come from. But if there are any issues or complaints you have about my show, go to the forums and tell me about them so that I can improve. Okay, let's get on with this stuff. We've got one last feature for the day, and that is, of course,
Second Wind.
Those asking where the Murlocs went this week, it will be in the podcast or available as a separate download. I wish Kiki the very best of luck with his end-of-year Java project for his final year at university, which is what he's doing right now, which is why he couldn't be here to do the Murlocs this week. Total Biscuit is a big liar. The Ask the Murloc segment will be available as a separate download and in the podcast feed from wcradio.com. Oh well, never mind, IRL greater than WoW. So, here we go. Second win this week. This has always been a bone of contention with me, and I've really despised it ever since they announced it, and to be quite honest, I really, really still hate it. It just sucks. So, here's my opinion. The second win. Were the new races the cheap-ass content that we thought they'd be? This is just going off my notes. My show notes consist of 4 lines. As in my 4 topics, I put 1 line for each, and the rest of it just comes out off the top of my head. So yes, I make everything up, so you cannot trust anything I say. Oh dear, I've really shot myself in the foot there, haven't I? Never mind. What are your experiences? Has the addition of these new races given your game experience anything positive whatsoever? Now, it's been my firm belief ever since they announced it that this was, to be quite honest, the cheapest idea of content ever. Really. Adding new races. Now, you know what? In an expansion, you would expect the ability to progress your existing character. And yes, that has been given. But you know what the crazy thing was? One of the biggest selling points of the expansion was, oh look, Blood Elves and Draenei. It was hypeable. The first race was announced at BlizzCon, and the second race was announced after a ton of hype. Now, to be honest, I never found any of these races remotely important. I didn't find them particularly important to the storyline, although lorehounds may make me disagree. And I didn't find them remotely important as regards to my experience of play. Didn't believe it. No. The question is, did it affect you in any way? And I'm going to tell you how much it's affected me. Very, very little. Now, the addition of the Paladin class to the Horde, and the addition of course, the Shaman class to the Alliance, that affected me. It's interesting that they felt the need to add in 2 new races. In my opinion, it was simply a way to slip these classes in. Let's add 2 new races and let them be these classes, so we can add some kind of semi-credible lore explanation. Now, no, because it was a game mechanic change, pure and simple. You can try and disguise it all you like as a lore thing, but it isn't. It was quite simply a change made specifically for the sake of game mechanics and the way that they design boss encounters. Now, they're designing boss encounters around the idea that the Paladin may in fact be there. The Maiden of Virtue is a perfect example within Karazhan, in which the easiest way to defeat the encounter is if you have a Paladin using Blessing of Sacrifice. Now, that's all well and good. I have no issues now, at least, with them putting them in. before the expansion, and indeed a little bit after the expansion, I ranted and raved, and I do still believe this to some degree, about the homogenization of the Alliance and the Horde. I still do believe that that kind of sucked, and that we could use a little bit more class diversity, even if it is just specific racials or faction-specific skills. I really do believe that that's an important element to the game, and that sticking in paladins and shamans to both sides really did harm that. But I can live with it. It's not a game breaker for me. It isn't, not at all. It is no game breaker. I can live with the fact that that has happened. However, the fact that so much development time was in fact spent on new areas and such for the Blood Elves and the Draenei, I really can't justify. Yeah, it's nice to give all this stuff here, but most people are not going to seriously experience that content. And by seriously, I mean re-roll and get a character up to level 70 that will then be their main. I would say that those people, statistically speaking, are in the minority. Yeah, you may want to play a Blood Elf at some point. And you'll think, woo, all of these new areas. Well, these new areas are pretty much the same as the last starting areas were. They just look different. And while they've enhanced them, assuredly, that's still not great. I don't believe that it was genuine new content. I think it was a very, very cheap way of slipping in the idea of having paladins and shamans within the game. Again, the importance of adding in this new content, in my opinion, is for the existing player base with their level 60s and 70s already. That is the content which matters most, because those are the kind of people who have been paying to play the game for a long time. Their subscriptions have been running for a year, perhaps 2 years, and to be quite honest, those are the kind of people that you need to stay in your game, your grassroots supporters and your month-to-month subscription players, not the people who may try it for a little while, maybe get a Blood Elf up to 20 or 30, only play a Blood Elf because they've just got into the game and just decided to buy the Burning Crusade to start with, which is actually not very likely, bearing in mind that the rest of the content is really 60 to 70 stuff. So there is not a massive number of reasons to buy the expansion if you're just getting into the game, although you may end up doing so anyway, and it is very surprising that they haven't done a collection pack with both yet. Because if they've got to push the expansion to new players, that would be the way they did it. But no, the expansion was specifically designed to keep existing players in the game, and that is at odds with the fact that one of its biggest selling points was 2 new races. That really is... it's bizarre. I can't reconcile that in my mind. It just seems to me like it was a great promotional tool. But it wasn't really, was it? To anyone that even thinks about it, it wasn't a great promotional tool at all. It's like adding in something that most people aren't really going to seriously use. I'm trying to think of an example. Let's have a think. When you, say, acquire an expansion pack for an RPG that you've been playing for a very, very long time, you expect the vast majority of that content to add in something that you will use. It's a little bit different with, say, Diablo and maybe Titan Quest and all of these other RPGs. Dungeon Siege, again, another example, that add new classes. Adding new classes is very, very different to adding new races, because it adds a different way to play. Generally, they don't really add new races, except as maybe an afterthought. That doesn't happen. You don't get a new race in Titan Quest. You get a new mastery, which is effectively not only just one new class, it's 8 new classes, because you can combine that particular mastery with another mastery to create another hybrid class. Now that really genuinely adds something new to the game and gives people a reason to re-roll, because it's something they haven't done before. Now, if classes are already in the game and all you're doing is giving them a reskin, then that's not the best way to give them something new to do. You can say that shamans and paladins, oh, well, that's something new to do. Well, to be honest, you could have been a shaman or a paladin anyway. You would have just had to roll on another server for it. Yeah, it gives you the opportunity to now roll that class on the faction of your choice. That's great, but is that really, genuinely speaking, new content? I don't believe so. I really don't. The meat of the Burning Crusade expansion, at least what's kept people playing, in my honest opinion, is the new stuff they put in as regards the outline. The new areas, the new quests, the new instances, the new items. That's all you really expect from an RPG expansion pack. You expect new zones to explore, new monsters to kill, new loot to acquire, new dungeons to plunder. Why not? Surely that goes back to my RPG formula. Slay the dragon, get the girl, steal the loot. Those 3 points that keep people playing an RPG, and the reason that you play an RPG in the first place. At no point does it ever say, get a makeover, or change your race. That doesn't matter. It's meaningless. And in my honest opinion, it hasn't added anything to the game. A different style of architecture that you may see around the place. Great. It's a reskin. It's not genuine, meaty content that you can get your teeth into. Rerollers, yeah, it adds something for them. Not much, though. They can still play the same classes as they always could, and they still play exactly the same. You're not going to tell me that a couple of Blood Elf or Draenei racials seriously changed the way that you play. It's not the case. Races are not that diverse. It's not like playing other RPGs where races have such large differences, stats-wise. Take Dungeons & Dragons, again, as an example. Stats differences inherent that are very, very significant as regards to the class and the race combination that you're playing. Very significant. I remember playing back to Angband, all the way back to NetHack variant games. You know those old dungeon crawler games that you were able to play, and you are an ASCII 2 character that ran around in this little dungeon, and you killed like lowercase m's and uppercase d's. And that was a lot of fun. But that's because the race-class combinations actually had a genuine meaning. In WoW they do not, which means, in my opinion, that adding Blood Elf and Draenei racials, and adding Blood Elf and Draenei in general, was simply nothing more than a very, very cheap content addition and a good promotional tool. And I'm not going to dispute that it was a nice promotional tool, but I really do not genuinely believe they added anything whatsoever to the game. And I would love to hear your opinions on this for next week's Second Win. Yes!
Second win!
Second Win next week. I want to hear what you have to say. Thank you very much for listening to the show. I have shout-outs to do. You've got a couple of minutes to send me shout-outs via either IRC, so join WoW Radio's IRC, go to irc.mmoirc.com, or go to wcradio.com, click the IRC chat button at the top of the screen, or email me at themurloc@gmail.com. You've got a couple of minutes before the mighty Octel and Hordak will take to the stage for their infinitely entertaining cavalcade of cool. And I actually just made that up. That was not written at all. I promise. I don't have a team of writers in the back that I hit with a stick. Now, shout out to the Redheads. Love Beastie. Stroke. Pierre Sama is dire like a donkey. Now, that is a very, very frightening thing, in my opinion. That is the kind of shout out that I don't want, because that just scares me. I also have a shout out from Septic. He says, if you wouldn't mind doing this, say this on air. Hizo, why don't you like my intro music? That's from Septic. Yeah, why don't you like my intro music, you heartless son of a fiend? Shout out to me, got 2 tier 4 last night, and my Charmy Shield from the chess event. That's to Ian, or Tian, I can't remember. Shout out to BlizzCon, and I hope that you will be there so I can buy you a Pinot Colada. That's from Sova. Ooh, someone's offering me free alcohol. I hope it's not laced with drugs. A shout out to Desmond, who finally re-rolled Horde. Go him, that's from the Toaster Bot. A shout out to Incompetent Players for making incompetent guilds. That's from Panacea. A shout out to the writers in the back. That's from Zar. There are no writers in the back. It's a lie, it's a lie. Hey, TB, would you like to give a shout out to Dathus, leader of the Netherstorm Elites on Thunderhorn US. A shout out to the Guild Inspiration on the Norgan and US server. Much love, that's from My Lecky. What else have we got? A shout out to Quila from Argenton US, who probably doesn't listen anyway. That's from Endra. Well, if he doesn't listen, then he's certainly missing out, in my honest opinion. So tell your friends, tell the world, tell your guilds. A shout out to Karkuo and Werner Boogle. That is the bizarre name, that really is. On Rune Totem EU, oh yes. That's from Ollie Gill. A shout out to Luku and Aina and the almighty roast chicken /yum. That's from Luku. I'm scared. To Buyu, oh, is it Bui? Boo, of Kiljai Dan, and then Tubathos for transmuting Arcanite. Who the hell uses Arcanite, anyway? A shout out to the Grim Guzzlers on EU Sunstrider. That's from Zina. What else have we got? A shout out to Chapter 4 on Frostmane EU, and soon be taking down McTherod and starting on the Serpent Shrine. I do hope the bugs are fixed before you get in there. Also to Korgosh, aka Allurian from IRC. Good lord, my IRC has gone insane. Shout out to Oza, Wretched Mist, JT, and all my favourite Obsidian Spur guildies on Sargeras EU. And I am done, folks. I am absolutely done. That is it from me. You've been listening to Blue Please. Thank you for listening. Octel and Hordak coming up right after this. Thank you for listening. I've been Total Biscuit. This has been Blue Please. This has been the Murloc. Good night.